The humans call it stupidity. We call it inexplicable behavioral anomaly number 7043. Either way, Captain Vex Morant just did something that made my three hearts skip a beat, and not in the good way. Did that pink-skinned lunatic just pull a Kavarian death spear out of his own teammate? I whispered to my recording device, watching through the observation deck's reinforced glass. My mandibles clicked nervously as I processed what I'd just witnessed. The human female, Luna Torres, had been impaled clean through the chest by a weapon designed to kill even our most resilient warriors. The crystalline blade, roughly the size of my forearm, had punched through her sternum and emerged from her back, painting the metallic floor of the combat arena with crimson. Any rational being would have called for medical assistance, perhaps said a prayer to whatever deity they worshipped, and prepared for the inevitable. But Captain Morant... oh no, he grabbed that spear with his bare hands and yanked it out, like he was pulling a splinter from wood. Fascinating, I muttered, my four eyes focusing on different aspects of the scene. The female should be dead. The male should be celebrating his survival. Instead, they're both, I paused, rechecking my instruments. Both perfectly fine? That's not possible. Luna Torres, who moments ago had been gasping her last breath, now stood upright, breathing normally. The gaping wound in her chest had vanished, leaving only torn fabric and dried blood as evidence of the injury. Meanwhile, Captain Morant was examining his own torso with the casual interest of someone checking their watch. "Well," he said, his voice carrying that particular human tone that meant trouble, "this is new." And that's when I saw it. The same wound that had disappeared from Luna's chest now decorated Morant's. The spear had somehow transferred not just the injury, but the entire life-threatening trauma from one human to another. The captain's shirt was soaked with blood, his face pale, and yet he remained standing. "By the 7 moons of Graxis," I breathed. He actually took her wound upon himself. The other humans in the arena were reacting with their typical mixture of panic and determination. Dr. Maya Singh, their medical officer, was already rushing toward Morant with her emergency kit. Commander Jake Roberts was shouting orders that nobody seemed to be following. And Elena Vasquez, their weapons specialist, was staring at the spear in Morant's hands like it had personally insulted her ancestors. "Get that thing away from him." Dr. Singh yelled, her hands already working to stop the bleeding. "Whatever it is, it's not natural." "Natural." Morant laughed and blood flecked his lips. "Maya, we're fighting aliens on a space station orbiting a star that shouldn't exist. Nothing about this is natural." I had to admit the human had a point. The entire scenario was absurd. Our species, the Kelthani, had discovered this ancient facility 3 cycles ago, buried deep within an asteroid field that appeared to bend the laws of physics. The structure itself defied explanation, featuring technology that predated our civilization by millennia. Naturally, we'd done what any sensible species would do. We'd declared it off limits and established a research station nearby. The humans, however, had different ideas. They'd shown up 6 months ago in their impossibly crude spacecraft, claimed the facility was really cool looking, and promptly moved in. Our protests had been met with polite smiles and offers to share their space coffee, whatever that meant. "The spear," Luna said, her voice stronger now that she wasn't dying. "It's not Kavarian. Look at the markings." She was right. As I magnified the visual feed, I could see inscriptions along the weapon's shaft that didn't match any known language. The symbols seemed to shift and writhe, as if they were alive. Even more disturbing, the spear itself appeared to be responding to Morant's touch, glowing with an internal light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "It's bonded to him," Elena observed, her technical expertise evident in her tone. "The weapon has somehow linked itself to his life force." "Wonderful," Morant muttered, swaying slightly as Dr. Singh worked to stabilize him. "I always wanted matching accessories." The sarcasm was classic human behavior. Faced with certain death, they made jokes. Confronted with impossible situations, they complained about the inconvenience. It was simultaneously endearing and infuriating. Captain, Dr. Singh said, her voice tight with concentration. The wound isn't healing. Whatever this thing did to transfer the injury, it's also preventing normal cellular regeneration. At this rate, you'll bleed out within the hour. Then we need to figure out how to reverse it, Commander Roberts said, his leadership instincts kicking in. Luna, you were the one originally injured. Do you remember anything unusual about the moment you were hit? Luna shook her head. It happened too fast. 1 second I was examining the wall carvings, the next I was looking at 3 feet of alien spear sticking out of my chest. I switched my attention to the wall she'd been examining. The carvings were indeed unusual, even by the standards of this facility. They depicted figures that looked remarkably similar to humans, engaged in what appeared to be some kind of ritual or ceremony. At the center of each scene was a weapon identical to the one now killing Captain Morant. The Covenant of Suffering, I whispered, suddenly understanding. The ancient texts had mentioned such a thing, though I'd dismissed them as mythology. It's a ritual weapon. It doesn't just wound the body, it binds souls together. Of course, the humans couldn't hear me from their position in the arena. I was safely tucked away in my observation post, documenting their every move for the Kelthani Science Council. My job was to observe, not interfere. The regulations were quite clear on that point. But regulations hadn't accounted for Captain Morant's next decision. If this thing is bonded to me, he said, gripping the spear tighter despite the obvious pain, then maybe I can use it to save the others. Others? Dr. Singh looked confused. What others? That's when the facility's ancient security system activated. Alarms began blaring throughout the structure, and emergency lighting bathed everything in a hellish red glow. The walls themselves seemed to come alive, panels sliding away to reveal weapons that had been dormant for eons. And from the depths of the facility came a sound that made my scales stand on end, the roar of something that had been sleeping for far too long. Well, Morant said, blood still dripping from his lips, I guess we're about to find out what this place was really built for. The first wave of defenders emerged from hidden passages throughout the complex. They weren't alive, not in any conventional sense. These were constructs, mechanical beings animated by the same force that powered the facility itself. Each one stood 8 feet tall, with limbs that ended in weapons instead of hands. Their faces were featureless except for glowing sensors that tracked movement with predatory precision. Defensive positions. Commander Roberts shouted, but his team was already moving. Human combat training was surprisingly effective, even when facing unknown threats. Elena's energy rifle discharged in rapid bursts, each shot finding its mark with mechanical precision. The constructs staggered under the assault but continued advancing, their damaged forms regenerating almost as quickly as they were destroyed. The energy weapons aren't effective enough, she called out. These things are self-repairing. Dr. Singh was still working frantically to keep Morant conscious, her medical supplies scattered around his prone form. I need more time. The bleeding isn't stopping. Time is something we don't have, Morant replied, struggling to his feet despite Singh's protests. The spear in his hand pulsed brighter, and I noticed something interesting. The construct seemed to be avoiding him. They're afraid of the weapon, I realized, speaking into my recorder. The spear isn't just a tool for transferring wounds. It's a key, a control mechanism for the facility's defenses. Luna had noticed the same thing. Vex, they're not attacking you directly. The spear is keeping them at bay. Then maybe it's time to test its other capabilities, Morant said, raising the weapon. The moment he did, the carvings on the walls began to glow with the same light as the spear. The constructs froze mid-attack, their sensors flickering uncertainly. By the void, Commander Roberts breathed. You're controlling them. Not controlling, Morant corrected, wincing as the movement aggravated his wound. In communicating, this whole facility is alive, and the spear is its voice. The implications were staggering. If the humans could actually interface with the ancient technology, they might be able to unlock secrets that had eluded our research teams for years. But first they had to survive the experience. More constructs were emerging from the depths, and these were different. Larger, more heavily armed, and apparently immune to the spear's pacifying effect. They moved with purpose, surrounding the human team with military precision. "Okay," Morant said, his voice growing weaker. "Maybe I was wrong about the communication part." The largest construct stepped forward, its form easily 12 feet tall and armed with weapons that crackled with energy. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the facility's communication system, reaching even my observation post. "Intruders. The sacred weapon has been claimed. Initiate trial of worthiness." "Trial of worthiness," Elena muttered, reloading her rifle. "That sounds ominous." "Bearer of the spear," the construct continued, its sensors focusing on Morant. "You have accepted the covenant. You will face the Guardians or surrender the weapon." Morant looked around at his team, then at the spear in his hands. The weapon was still glowing, but I could see that its light was beginning to fade. Whatever energy it drew from him was slowly killing him. "Let me guess," he said, addressing the construct. "If I surrender the weapon, you'll let my team go?" "Negative. Intruders will be eliminated. The covenant must be fulfilled." Of course, Morant sighed. "Because that would be too easy." Dr. Singh grabbed his arm. "Vex, you can't fight those things. You're barely standing as it is." "I'm not planning to fight them," Morant replied, and I could hear the grim determination in his voice. "I'm planning to beat them." The distinction was apparently lost on his teammates, but I understood. Humans had a peculiar talent for finding loopholes in situations that seemed impossible. It was one of their most frustrating and admirable qualities. Choose, the construct demanded. Face the trial or accept death. Morant raised the spear, and for a moment I thought he might collapse from the effort. But then something extraordinary happened. The other humans moved to support him, not physically, but emotionally. They formed a protective circle around their wounded captain, their weapons ready, their expressions determined. "We face the trial," Morant said, his voice carrying clearly through the facility. "All of us. Together." The construct's sensors flickered, as if processing an unexpected input. "The covenant binds only one. Others cannot participate." "Then you don't understand humans very well," Luna said, stepping forward. "We don't abandon our own." "Relevant. The trial begins now." The floor beneath them began to shift, mechanical systems activating after millennia of dormancy. The arena was transforming, walls rising to create a more complex battlefield. In the distance I could hear the approach of even more constructs, these ones apparently designed specifically for combat. "Well," Morant said, gripping the spear tighter despite the pain, "this should be interesting." And as the first of the trial guardians emerged from the facility's depths, I realized that my simple observation mission had become something far more complex. The humans weren't just exploring an ancient facility, they were participating in a ritual that might determine the fate of everyone aboard the station, including me. The guardian that emerged was unlike the others. Where the previous constructs had been obviously mechanical, this one appeared almost organic. Its form flowed like liquid metal, constantly shifting between shapes as it moved. Weapons appeared and disappeared along its surface, adapting to match whatever threat it perceived. "That's not fair," Elena muttered, her rifle tracking the Guardian's movements. "How are we supposed to fight something that can become anything?" "The same way we fight everything else," Commander Roberts replied, "with teamwork and poor decision-making." The Guardian attacked without warning, its form extending into a dozen different appendages, each one tipped with a different weapon. Energy blasts, projectile weapons and bladed instruments all struck simultaneously, forcing the humans to scatter. But Morant remained in the center of the arena, the spear held before him like a talisman. As the Guardian's attacks approached, the weapon's glow intensified, and something impossible happened. The attacks passed through him harmlessly. The spear, Dr. Singh realized, it's not just transferring wounds anymore. It's protecting him from taking new ones. "At what cost?" Luna asked, and I could see her point. Each time the spear activated its protective field, Morant grew paler, his breathing more labored. The weapon was using his life force to fuel its abilities. "I can't keep this up much longer," Morant admitted, swaying on his feet. "Someone needs to find a way to end this trial." "Working on it," Elena called out, her instruments scanning the Guardian for weaknesses. "The construct is drawing power from nodes throughout the facility. If we can disrupt the energy flow." "How?" Commander Roberts demanded, ducking under a sweeping blade that had emerged from the Guardian's arm. "The carvings," Luna said suddenly. "They're not just decorative. They're part of the control system. If we can activate them in the right sequence." She was already moving toward the nearest wall, her hands tracing patterns in the ancient symbols. As she did, the carvings began to glow, responding to her touch. The Guardian's movements became more erratic, its form less stable. "It's working," Dr. Singh shouted. "Keep going." But the Guardian wasn't finished. Recognizing the threat, it abandoned its assault on the scattered humans and focused all its attention on Luna. A massive energy cannon formed along its back, charging with enough power to vaporize anything in its path. "Luna, move," Roberts yelled, but she was too focused on the wall carvings to hear him. That's when Captain Morant did something that defied every law of physics I knew. He threw the spear. The weapon sailed through the air with impossible accuracy, striking the Guardian's energy cannon just as it fired. The result was spectacular. The Guardian's own attack was reflected back at it, channeled through the spear's unique properties and amplified beyond its original power. The construct exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal. The arena fell silent except for the sound of settling debris and human breathing. "Did we win?" Dr. Singh asked, her voice uncertain. "The first trial is complete," the facility's voice announced. "The bearer has demonstrated courage. The second trial will begin in 60 seconds. "Second trial?" Morant collapsed to his knees, the spear clattering beside him. "How many of these things are there?" "7 trials total," the voice replied helpfully. "The covenant must be fulfilled." "7," Elena repeated, "and he's already half dead from the first one." I found myself leaning forward in my observation post, my recorder forgotten. This was no longer just a documentation mission. I was watching a man slowly sacrifice himself to save his team, one impossible trial at a time. The spear was still glowing, but weakly now. And as I watched, I realized something that made my mandibles click with alarm. The weapon wasn't just bonded to Morant anymore. It was becoming part of him. The second trial materialized before the humans could even catch their breath. This time the arena floor split open, revealing a chasm that seemed to stretch into infinity. Across the gap, 3 platforms hovered in the air, each one supporting a different challenge. "Bearer of the spear," the facility announced, "you must choose. Strength, wisdom, or sacrifice. Each path leads to salvation, but only one will preserve your companions." Captain Morant struggled to his feet, the spear's glow now so dim it was barely visible. His shirt was soaked with blood, and I could see his hands trembling as he gripped the weapon. Yet somehow he managed to project an aura of calm authority. "Let me guess," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "If I choose strength, I have to fight something bigger than the last Guardian. Wisdom means solving some impossible puzzle. And sacrifice," he paused, looking at his team. "Sacrifice means I give up more of myself." "Correct," the facility confirmed, "but understand, failure in any trial means death for all." Dr. Singh was beside him instantly, her medical scanner beeping frantically. "Vex, your vital signs are critical. You can't survive 6 more trials." "Then I guess I better make sure I don't fail," Morant replied, and I marveled at the human capacity for optimism in the face of certain doom. "There has to be another way," Luna said, still studying the wall carvings. "These symbols, they're not just describing the trials. They're showing the history of this place. Look." She pointed to a section of the wall that depicted figures similar to the humans, but with subtle differences. Their faces were elongated, their limbs more graceful. In the center of the scene, one figure held the spear while others stood in a circle around them. The original builders, Commander Roberts realized. They went through these trials too. And they survived, Elena added, her technical mind already working on the problem. Which means there's a solution we're missing. The spear in Morant's hand pulsed once weakly and suddenly the carvings changed. New symbols appeared, showing the same scene but from a different angle. This time the figure holding the spear wasn't alone. The others in the circle were connected to the weapon by threads of light, sharing its burden. The covenant of suffering, I whispered into my recorder. It's not just about one person bearing the pain. It's about distributing it among those who are willing to share it. Of course, the humans couldn't hear my revelation. But Luna was reaching the same conclusion on her own, her fingers tracing the newly revealed symbols. The spear can bond to multiple people, she said, her voice filled with sudden understanding. Vex, you don't have to carry this alone. Absolutely not, Morant said immediately. I'm not putting any of you through this. With respect, Captain, Dr. Singh replied, that's not your decision to make. We're a team. We face dangers together. Maya's right, Commander Roberts added. Besides, if we share the load, you might actually survive long enough to complete the trials. Elena was already pulling out her scanner, analyzing the spear's energy patterns. The weapon's output is designed for distribution among multiple subjects. One person was never meant to bear the full burden. Morant looked around at his team, and I could see the internal struggle playing out on his face. His protective instincts warred with his practical understanding of their situation. Finally, he nodded. All right, he said. But if this goes wrong? It won't, Luna said firmly, stepping forward to place her hand on the spear's shaft. We've got your back. The moment she made contact, the weapon flared to life with renewed energy. The wound in Morant's chest began to close, while a smaller version appeared on Luna's arm. The pain was being shared, distributed between them. Dr. Singh was next, followed by Commander Roberts and Elena. Each contact spread the burden further, until all 5 humans were connected by the spear's power. The weapon itself had transformed, its single shaft now branching into multiple streams of light that connected to each team member. Well, Morant said, his color already returning, this is definitely not covered in the manual. Interesting, the facility's voice observed. The covenant expands. The trials will adapt. The 3 platforms across the chasm began to move, reconfiguring themselves into a single, larger challenge. Instead of choosing between strength, wisdom, or sacrifice, the humans would now face all 3 simultaneously. Of course they would, Elena muttered. Because nothing can ever be simple. The first platform activated, and a new guardian emerged. This one was even larger than the previous construct, with multiple arms and weapons that seemed to anticipate their every move. But with the spear's power distributed among the team, their coordination was perfect. They moved as one entity, each member anticipating the other's actions. Commander Roberts and Elena engaged the Guardian directly, their weapons' fire precisely coordinated. Luna continued working on the wall carvings, now able to access deeper levels of the facility's systems. Dr. Singh provided tactical support while monitoring everyone's vital signs through their shared connection. And Morant, he stood in the center of their formation, the spear serving as both weapon and conduit for their combined will. The Guardian's movements are predictable, Elena called out, her shots finding weak points in its armor. It's following a preset pattern. Then let's break the pattern, Roberts replied, switching to a flanking maneuver that forced the construct to adapt. As they fought, I noticed something remarkable happening. The humans weren't just sharing the spear's burden, they were sharing their skills. Roberts' tactical expertise was available to Elena, who combined it with her technical knowledge. Luna's understanding of the facility's systems enhanced Dr. Singh's medical insights. and Morant's leadership bound them all together into something greater than the sum of their parts. The wisdom challenge, Luna announced, her hands moving rapidly across the wall controls. It's not just about solving puzzles. It's about understanding the facility's true purpose. Which is? Morant asked, parrying a strike from the Guardian's energy blade. Protection, Luna replied, her eyes wide with sudden comprehension. This whole place is a sanctuary. The trials aren't meant to kill intruders. They're meant to find worthy guardians. The Guardian froze mid-attack, its sensors flickering. Partial truth achieved, the facility announced. Sacrifice component remains. Sacrifice, Dr. Singh repeated, her medical training giving her insight into the concept. Not just physical pain, but emotional cost. The willingness to give up something precious for the greater good. What do we have to sacrifice? Elena asked, reloading her weapon. That's when I understood the true nature of the trials. The facility wasn't just testing their courage or intelligence. It was testing their bonds as a team, their willingness to support each other even when it meant personal cost. Your individual identities, Morant said, his voice quiet but certain. The spear is asking us to become something new, something unified. A collective consciousness, Roberts asked, his tactical mind grasping the implications. Not exactly, Luna said, her hands still working on the controls. More like a family, bound together by shared experience and mutual trust. The Guardian's form began to shift, its aggressive posture changing to something more observational. Understanding approaches, the facility confirmed. Final choice remains. We accept, Morant said, speaking for all of them. We accept the responsibility of guardianship. The spear's light intensified, and suddenly the arena was filled with visions of the facility's history. I watched through my instruments as the humans experienced the memories of the original builders, understanding their purpose and their sacrifice. The facility had been created as a refuge, a place where different species could come together in times of crisis. The trials were designed to identify beings capable of selfless leadership, individuals who could unite others in common cause. We're not the first, Elena realized, her voice filled with wonder. There have been others. Guardians from dozens of different worlds. And now it's our turn, Dr. Singh added, her medical instincts already adapting to the responsibility of caring for potential refugees. The Guardian stepped back, its form beginning to fade. Trials complete, it announced. Guardians accepted. Facility systems transferring to new administration. Throughout the complex, I could feel the ancient systems coming online, responding to their new human operators. The facility was awakening from its long slumber, preparing to serve its original purpose once again. So, Morant said, looking around at his transformed team, anyone of experience running an interdimensional sanctuary. How hard can it be? Roberts replied, his leadership instincts already adapting to their new role. We've handled worse. Have we, though? Elena asked, her instruments detecting energy signatures from across the galaxy. Because I'm reading incoming vessels from at least 12 different star systems. Refugees, Luna said, her connection to the facility's systems providing her with information. They're fleeing something big. Dr. Singh was already preparing her medical bay, her training expanding to encompass species she'd never encountered. Whatever they're running from will help them. And as I watched the first refugee ships enter the facility's docking bays, I realized that my observation mission had become something entirely different. The humans hadn't just survived the trials, they'd transformed them into something unprecedented. They'd taken a test designed for individuals and turned it into a triumph of collective action. They'd faced impossible odds and emerged not just victorious but fundamentally changed. They'd become exactly what the galaxy needed, leaders who understood that true strength came not from standing alone, but from standing together. The spear still glowed in Morant's hand, but its light had changed. Instead of the harsh illumination of a weapon, it now cast a warm, welcoming radiance. The covenant of suffering had become the covenant of hope. Well, I said into my recorder, the Kelthani Science Council is going to have a very interesting report to read. Because somehow, impossibly, the humans had done what my species and countless others had failed to do. They'd unlocked the secret of the ancient facility not through superior technology or advanced knowledge, but through something far more powerful, their willingness to sacrifice for each other. And as refugee ships continued to arrive, seeking sanctuary from whatever darkness pursued them, I knew that the galaxy had found its new guardians. Not perfect beings, not technologically superior races, but humans who understood that the greatest strength lay not in the individual, but in the bonds that connected them all. The trials were over. The real work was just beginning. And despite everything logic told me about human limitations, I found myself believing they would succeed. Because that's what humans did. They took impossible situations and made them possible through sheer, stubborn determination and an unwavering commitment to each other. The spear pulsed once more, and Captain Vex Morant smiled. He was no longer dying in anyone's place. Instead, he was living for everyone's future. And somehow that made all the difference.